I'm Melissa Ross, and just ahead this hour on First Coast Connect, results of a study showing widespread effectiveness for vaccinating children aged 5 to 11 against coronavirus. We'll speak with pediatrician Mobeen Rathore. Your questions answered, parents. That's ahead. Then next.
The pandemic has had a unique role in lots of areas, and we are seeing that it's impacting the numbers and percentages of people that are having suicidal ideations.
Supporting children and teens at risk of suicide. Plus, the debut of EV Rider hitting the open road and going electric. That's in our Going Green. It's all ahead. After the day's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. President Biden will deliver a speech at the UN this morning. NPR's Windsor Johnston reports he's expected to lay out his vision to rebuild U.S. alliances with world powers.
White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says a major part of Biden's speech will focus on putting the United States back into a position of global leadership while strengthening diplomatic ties with world leaders.
The president's going to lay out the case for why the next decade will determine our future, not just for the United States, but for the global community. And he will talk, and this will be a central part of his remarks, about the importance of reestablishing our alliances after the last several years.
Recently, President Biden has found himself at odds with allies on a number of high-profile issues, including the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan and steps to counter the growing threat posed by China. Windsor Johnston, NPR News, Washington.
Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas says he is deeply disturbed by images from the border in Texas. These appear to show U.S. Border Patrol agents on horseback confronting Haitian migrants using their reins, apparently like whips.
We have directed an investigation. That investigation is underway, and it will be conducted swiftly, and the public needs and deserves to know its results. I also have directed that the Office of Professional Responsibility be on site in Del Rio full time. We will not tolerate any mistreatment of an individual.
That audio is courtesy of CNN. The U.S. is forcing thousands of Haitian migrants camped at a port of entry in Texas to fly back to Haiti. Congressional Democrats are advancing a plan to link a critical increase in the federal government's ability to borrow money with a spending bill that is needed to keep the federal government running after September. Many Republicans are opposed to raising the debt ceiling. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says the country will face terrible consequences if lawmakers fail to raise the debt ceiling. The financial problems of a big Chinese property developer sparked yesterday's big sell-offs in markets around the world. NPR's Emily Fang has more on the Chinese company.
Evergrande became China's second biggest developer by taking out risky loans, selling millions of apartments a year to pay those loans, and then taking out more loans. But new rules limiting how much debt a real estate company can take on and slowing property sales are putting Evergrande in a shaky position. It will likely default on millions of dollars of bond interest payments, and fears that it could collapse are sending stocks in other property developers tumbling. The stocks for housing-related companies are also falling. Japanese toilet maker Toto, for example, sells to Evergrande and saw its stocks dip. On Monday, the Dow Jones Industrial had its worst performance since July, and the S&P 500 and NASDAQ were at their lowest since May. Emily Fang, NPR News, Shanghai.
This is NPR.
And the time is 4 minutes after 9. This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. More than 30,000 families have yet to claim over $200 million worth of refunds from Florida's prepaid college tuition program. Prices for the prepaid plans were rolled back last year as tuition at state colleges and universities remained static, leaving some accounts paid off early. On average, families who haven't yet claimed their refunds have $4,700 waiting for them. Shannon Colavecchio is with Florida Prepaid.
This is a time when we know that there are families who could definitely use a $4,700 check, and we don't want to hold it. We would like you to have it and claim it.
And families with refunds waiting can also transfer the balance to the accounts of other children or put the money into another savings plan to help pay for books, technology, and housing for college students. Gas prices across Florida jumped about 10 cents a gallon last week after reports that energy infrastructure across the Gulf of Mexico is recovering slower than expected from Hurricane Ida. According to AAA Auto Club, regular unleaded started off this week at around $3.10 a gallon. That's the highest gas has been all year. Hurricane Ida was a Category 4 storm when it came ashore in Louisiana August 29th, 16 years to the day that Category 3 Katrina made landfall in the same area. And temperatures now in the mid to upper 70s around Jacksonville. There's an 80% chance of showers and thunderstorms, mainly after 4 today.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance with Snapshot, a personalized program that bases rates on safe driving habits at Progressive.com. Not available in California and North Carolina or from all agents.
Approval is closer than ever for vaccinating younger kids to protect them from COVID-19. Good morning. We're live from Studio 5. I'm Melissa Ross, and this is First Coast Connect. Thanks for listening. Just ahead, what parents need to know about that new option on the horizon to vaccinate children age 5 to 11. What are your questions? Get on the line now. It's 549-2937. Then later, hitting the open road and going electric. Bill Bortzfield joins us with the debut of his new YouTube show, EV Rider. That's in our Going Green. But first this hour, it is the news parents of young children have long been waiting for: approval of a COVID vaccine for kids under the age of 12. Well, the first results from a highly anticipated trial studying the effectiveness and safety of both the Pfizer and BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine for kids age 5 to 11 shows promising results. The pharmaceutical companies say early results of their trial indicate the vaccine is safe for children and also that the shot establishes a strong antibody response against the virus. News of the results come as pediatric cases of COVID increase nationwide. Now, here's the wrinkle. You will have to wait a bit longer before you can give your children this shot. At any rate, though, it's news that one prominent local pediatrician and frequent guest of this program has been waiting for. Dr. Mobeen Rathore, Professor, Associate Chair, Department of Pediatrics at UF. He's also affiliated with Baptist and Wolfson Children's. And he's on the line now with more about vaccinating our children to protect them from COVID. Dr. Rathore, always good to have your insights. Good morning.
Good morning, Melissa. Good to be on the show.
And parents, what are your questions about vaccinating kids? Call us up now, 549-2937. Emails to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. Tweets to @MelissaInJax. So this is something you've been touting for months, Dr. Rathore, that the minute approval comes, we need to vaccinate our younger children. Tell us about the latest results.
Yeah, I think this is very encouraging news. It's important for children to receive the protection that this vaccine will give. And really, we are encouraged by Pfizer Biotech's announcement, and we are eager to see the FDA review the full set of data as a next step and for approval for 5 to 11-year-old children. The vaccine, from what I've seen and everybody else, it's on a press release, and I hate to get my science and evidence on press releases, but it's still good news that it is safe and effective. There's a vigorous response compared to the older individuals for the vaccine in the 5 to 11-year-olds. And it also, the other important thing is that they are using a lower dose of the vaccine, which is not totally unexpected. And that's one of the reasons these studies in the younger children are being done. And the data will be submitted, we hope, to the FDA very soon.
Right. Both Pfizer and BioNTech say they'll submit their results to the FDA for review and possible emergency use authorization of these vaccines for kids aged 5 to 11 years old. Reminder, folks, any child 12 or older is already eligible to be vaccinated. So, Dr. Rathore, these are strong results, but parents still have to wait a while longer before they can vaccinate their children, correct?
Yes, I think children are not little adults, so I think it's important that we wait so we can evaluate. FDA can evaluate the data, and then data will become available to all of us. And we are looking forward to receiving and actually reviewing that data from this clinical trial. So I think a little bit longer wait is important. I think we should not we cannot use the vaccine that we are currently using for adults because of the higher dose.
What's your message to parents that are considering this for their children, but they have misgivings or concerns?
Well, let me tell you, more than 5.5 million children have been infected with this virus since the beginning of the pandemic. And children have suffered, children have suffered in numerous other ways. This includes disruption of their education, harms to their mental and emotional health, and greatly diminish the access to critical medical services because of that. So I think vaccinating children will protect their health and also allow them to fully engage in all of the activities that are so important for the health and development of our children. You know, children do get sick from COVID, and sometimes they get very sick, as we have spoken several times on this show, Melissa. And vaccines have the power to protect the children and stop this pandemic. And I think we all need to make sure that children who make up a significant part of this population are vaccinated, and they must be part of our strategy to control this virus so it cannot continue to spread. And that will also protect not only children, but everybody else.
Now, parents are following this so closely because, of course, many of them have younger children in school. And parents who have kids at schools without a mask mandate say this vaccine can't come soon enough. I spoke recently with local mom Rebecca Croft, who has a child at a local charter school, the River City Science Academy.
We were all upset and frustrated after the first day of school to see that many of the students weren't wearing masks. About half of the staff members were not wearing masks. And we began to ask questions to the principal and the administrators of the school for why they weren't following Duval County Public Schools protocol on that.
Okay, so Dr. Rathore, Duval County Public Schools does have a mask mandate. It doesn't seem to be enforced, though, in charter schools in this city. So if you've got a child under 12 at a school where there's no mask mandate, you can't wait to get that child vaccinated if you're worried about this. At the same time, data shows that the mask mandate in Duval does seem to be working. Cases of COVID among students are declining since the mandate went into effect, correct? You've been commenting on this as well.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I think mask mandates should be for all schools, public schools, private schools, charter schools. You know, kids are precious in all those schools, and the virus doesn't know which school is charter school, which school is public school, and which school is private school. And this particular school that I think mentioned, I saw on the news that one of their teachers actually passed away from this virus. So just to give you a perspective, you know, our mask mandate went into effect on the 7th of September. The 3 weeks prior to that, the number of cases were 432, 624, 592. The mask mandate goes in, and the very first week, the number of cases are 310. This past week that we just completed is 220. I mean, you know, this is good. I mean, this is not, you know, high-level science. You know, that's very expensive, but this is the proof of the pudding. You know, the mask mandates work. Now, they don't work by themselves. We know that. You have to do other things. Everybody has to be vaccinated who's eligible. And when the younger children have the eligibility, they should be vaccinated. Social distancing, good hand hygiene, cough etiquette, you know, good tracing, testing, and tracking. I mean, all these things have to work together. But mask mandates are a very important part of our whole process of protecting our children and staff and faculty in schools.
Yeah. Let me, I've disclosed this before. We have two children. They're both fully vaccinated in our home. One's over 18 now and traveling out of state. The other's 15 and attending a Duval County Public High School. And I have to say, I'm very thankful that there's a mask mandate there and that she's fully vaccinated. She tolerated the vaccine very well. and she is healthy. And let's knock on wood that stays. Let's go to your calls now for Dr. Mobeen Rathore. Do you have a child younger than 12? You should be eligible probably by the end of the year to vaccinate your child to protect them from COVID-19. What are your questions, folks? 549-2937. Crystal in St. John's is on the line. Hi, Crystal. Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks for calling.
No problem.
Go ahead.
Okay, so my question, well, first, color me shocked that the mask mandate is actually working.
Yeah.
I wish they would do that here in St. John's, and I wish people would realize that it does work. I do have an 8-year-old who is in 3rd grade, and we are in St. John's, no masks. My question is, I know it's Pfizer, I know it's a low dose for the kids, but I got Moderna, two series shots, and my second shot really impacted me. It was big time symptoms. And I was wondering from a child's perspective with Pfizer, with it being a lower dose, is it a 2-series shot? And what are the symptoms that may come about? Because I was thinking during that second shot, like, man, I don't know that I'd want to put my 8-year-old or younger through this. We also have a 2- and 3-year-old in daycare.
Sure.
So those are my questions. What are the symptoms? Is it a 2-series shot? And that's it.
Thank you so much, Crystal. Dr. Rathore, great questions from that mom. What can she expect for her child?
So yes, it is a 2-dose series, 21 days apart, just like the adults and the older children get. So that doesn't change. We expect some local reactions or systemic reactions in the first 24 to 72 hours, and that's not unexpected. All vaccines do that. In fact, I think I mentioned this on your show before. When I got my shingles vaccine, my reaction to that was much worse than I had with the coronavirus vaccine. I got the Pfizer vaccine. Some of my family members got the Moderna vaccine, and just as Crystal is saying, they were fine, and they were making fun of me because I had a little low-grade fever, not feeling well for the first 24 hours. And when they both got the second dose, they got a fever. And I think what Crystal, first of all, I think Crystal should talk to the child's pediatrician. They'll have advice for them specific for each child. But in general, if you are going to have pain, localized pain, fever, and such, you can take Tylenol, or you can take one of the ibuprofen or Aleve or something like that, which will make you feel better. So having reactions within first 24 to 72 hours is expected in a small number of individuals. It's going to be a little bit worse, but I think it's worth getting the 90% and higher protection against this infection. Let me make one more point. Melissa, most serious side effects of vaccines in general occur in the first 6 to 8 weeks. And so we have not seen that sort of situation with these vaccines.
Dr. Rathore, and if Crystal, if you're still listening, when I received the Moderna 2-dose, I took the advice of a lot of friends and acquaintances who advised me to not only take the ibuprofen, but to drink a bunch of Gatorade, especially after the second shot. There's anecdotal evidence that the electrolytes help ease any side effects. Dr. Rathore, I don't know if you sanction that, but that's what I did.
Well, having fluids is always a good idea. I'm not sure about Gatorade, but more fluids you drink, it's always helpful. I'm not aware of any studies that show that, but certainly using ibuprofen is going to be helpful to keeping your fever down if you have it, and also the localized pain and aches that you have. It certainly would help. As I said, it helped my family members.
549-2937. Elizabeth on the South Side. Hi, Elizabeth. Go ahead.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I was surprised to hear just a few minutes ago that students and staff and faculty at charter schools are not following the Duval County mask mandate. They seem very eager to take the sales tax revenue that's earmarked for Duval County schools, but they don't want to follow the other rules. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, we have heard from a number of parents, Elizabeth, not only from those who have children at River City Science Academy, which is a well-regarded charter school, but at some other places around the community. And they have not apparently all been following the mandate. And so the only recourse I suppose these parents have is to continue to press the board and the administrators of those schools about this issue. And thank you for your call. 549-2937. John in St. Augustine. Hi, John.
Hi, good morning. A question to Dr. Rathore. I had my son vaccinated. He got the Moderna. When he got the shot the first day, he was okay. The following morning, he had chest pains, very sick. And he bounced out of it the third day. And that episode happened exactly in the same pattern in the first and the second vaccination. And do you think that contributes to why people are hesitant?
Thanks, John. That's a great question. Dr. Rathore.
Yeah, I think we need to do a better job in expectations. As John said, typically, first 24 to 72 hours, you're going to get some side effects, and then you'll be fine after that. I think if people are prepared for that, I think then they know this is to be expected. I think we'll all be better off. I think when the vaccine is given, you're given a sheet of paper which explains all of this. And I think that's the important part, expectation. If you know that you're going to get this low-grade fever, you're going to get aches and pains, and and that's okay, because that's what we expect, I think then the concern is less. Now, there's nothing we can really do about those reactions, which is still, to be very honest with you, I'd rather have those reactions in the first 24 to 72 hours than get the infection and be sick for a long time and deadly sick sometimes. So, yeah, I hear John, I hear you, but I think we need to educate people so they are not overly concerned when that happens.
We'll go to your more calls in a moment for Dr. Mobeen Rathore, 549-2937. Let's get to a few of your tweets and emails, because as we're learning, approval could come as soon as Halloween, maybe, for vaccinating younger children, kids age 5 to 11, against COVID-19. Mary emails the show, is the October 31st date for kids under 12 realistic? My grandson, my daughter, and I are all going crazy. We barely leave the house for the safety of our unvaccinated son, who's under age 12. Dr. Rathore, people really are waiting on pins and needles for this approval, and they need to know when.
Yeah, I think I'm with her. I'm waiting for it. I want all children in that age group to get it. That would cover almost all school age children. The expectation is that, well, we don't know when. Pfizer has said it's going to submit its data very soon. And once they submit the data, then, obviously FDA is going to do its due diligence. And, I'm very proud of the fact that the FDA doesn't, come bend to pressure from anyone. Even the President of the United States can say what he wants to. They're going to do the right thing. And I think that should comfort all of us. And so they're going to put resources into this. I think the FDA realizes how important this is. They're going to put resources into that so they can get the evaluation and analysis as fast as they can. I think that a Halloween date is more of a deadline for me and the parents and other people who are advocating for vaccines for children. I don't believe that is or should be a deadline for FDA. What FDA needs to do is to make sure that they do an appropriate evaluation so they can confidently say, this is the vaccine that you can use in children. It is safe and it is effective and it has a robust response. So I would not be too unhappy if we don't meet the October 31st day. I would be much more happier that knowing that the FDA has done its due diligence, which I'm sure the professionals at FDA, these are hardworking public servants, that they will do that.
549-2937. Mike emails the show, since kids won't be vaccinated for several months, shouldn't all school staff be required to be vaccinated or tested for the virus?
Yeah, I think, we do require lots of other vaccines at lots of other places, working in the hospitals and, working in colleges. And I think, we strongly recommend that all teens and staff be vaccinated against COVID-19 as soon as they are eligible, because it's the best way to protect them during the pandemic. but I think we are at this point in time. I think although I have and many of the advocates have recommended vaccine requirements for all the other vaccines, I think ultimately this vaccine will also be required and should be required for anybody who's eligible for the vaccine. It's a little bit challenging and difficult because once you require a vaccine, you're also supposed to provide it on an ongoing basis, which we are right now. So my personal opinion is that, yes, this vaccine should be required for all eligible students and staff and faculty in school, just as it should be required for all healthcare providers.
John tweets the show, when will the vaccine be available for kids under age 5? Dr. Rathore.
Yeah, so we are actually conducting one of the studies for the Moderna vaccine for 6 months and older children. And I think that, if I was to take a venture a guess, I think this will be sometimes next year. It's not going to be faster than that. Early next year, hopefully.
Okay. But, you've been consistent about this throughout, that you want to see every child available and eligible to be vaccinated. I'm getting tweets about this expressing skepticism, and I'm hoping you can debunk some of that. As I tweeted this morning, Doctor, that you were going to be on the show, we got a lot of tweets. Here's one from Lori. Give me a break. Most parents do not intend to give their kids a shot that doesn't prevent COVID. Kids are more in danger from RSV or roto or the common cold. That's not true. Doctor.
Absolutely not. I'm sorry, I should be laughing, but it's absolutely not true. I mean, I'm not sure what else I can say. Kids get rotavirus vaccine. That's why they're not at risk for rotavirus, right? Kids get flu vaccine. That's why they're not at risk of flu vaccine. We all know this is not secret. The vaccine may not always prevent the infection, but the breakthrough infections are extremely low. There's ample data that, yes, breakthrough infections occur, but they're very low. But even then, those who get the breakthrough infections are not as sick. Most of the people who are dying in the hospital right now are unvaccinated. I mean, what else do we need? And to say that they are not as sick is just not true. It's just not true.
I have to say, it's amazing to me that parents who dutifully vaccinate their kids for polio, whooping cough, there's a whole slew of vaccinations that you have to do to send your child to school. As we're sitting here talking, I just got an email from the American Lung Association reminding everyone of the importance of getting vaccinated against pertussis, also known as whooping cough. Before that vaccine became available, people got very, very sick from this disease in this country and died in great numbers often. And so the problem is that vaccines are so successful in stamping out disease, people forget. People don't have living memory, Doctor, of what it was like before those vaccines were widely available and the immunity that they provide. And so they have skepticism about this vaccine, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's one of the problems with the success of something that's so wonderful as vaccines. I believe that all vaccines on the recommended immunization schedule for children and adolescents, they are important both for the individual's health as well as to protect communities. So yes, the whooping cough pertussis vaccine should be taken, and start taking your influenza vaccine. And I think the COVID vaccine is something that should not be considered any different than these other vaccines. If your child is eligible but has not yet been vaccinated, I would urge you to talk to your pediatrician about any questions you may have about the vaccine and consider getting it for your child and for yourself and your family as soon as possible. And one other point, those children who are not eligible, we can still protect them by cocooning them. You have heard me say this many times, Melissa. Everybody around that child should be masked. Everybody around that child should be vaccinated. And if your child is not eligible for the vaccine, you should demand, and I don't use that word lightly, that everybody around them is vaccinated and masked so you can protect your child. And I will also say we have over 500 children on a waiting list to get vaccinated. So parents are smart. They understand. And I understand some of the skepticism, but I think we need to look at the numbers, look at the data, look at the science, and hopefully talk to your pediatrician and make that decision for the best interest of your child.
Chris in St. Augustine. Hi, Chris. Thanks for calling in. Go ahead.
Hi. Just a quick question for the doctor. So, we're getting to a point where we're going to have the option to hit herd immunity from a vaccination, but I thought I understood, and maybe I'm wrong, that our long-term biggest threat is the virus mutating over time and eventually breaking through the vaccination. Globally, do we have any idea how long we think it's going to take before we hit a point where that's no longer a concern, where enough people over the world are vaccinated and this will go the way of polio, or do we not have any idea?
Thank you. That is such a great question, Chris. That is a big concern doctors and epidemiologists have. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, Chris, an excellent question. Now, the best way to stop the virus from mutating is not give the virus a chance to infect somebody and replicate. That's how viruses mutate. Viruses mutate all the time, we know that, but they need some place to replicate, and that's a susceptible host. So if you are vaccinated, then the virus does not get that opportunity to do that. Now, it may be that we are going to need a different vaccine, but we are used to that with influenza. Every year the influenza vaccine is slightly different, what we call a slight drift, and every 10 to 40 years there is a huge change in the influenza virus, and we have what we call a shift. And then we have an epidemic or a pandemic. H1N1 was the last example. So we have to almost look at in a similar manner. The vaccine we have right now, we know is effective against all the variants that we have, but we may in the future need a slightly different vaccine. And that's the beauty of this messenger mRNA platform. You can respond to that change faster than we have the traditional ways of making vaccines. So, Chris, you're very intuitive in thinking what you just said. We are probably going to need a different vaccine as the virus mutates. We need to make sure, and this is extremely important, that we immunize globally. The only reason we are able to get rid of smallpox is because the United States took the lead on that, and also on polio, to make sure that the world's population is immunized. We are never going to be safe and protected against these serious infections unless we make sure that globally people are protected from these serious infections. Because as you've heard this many times, a cliche almost, any infection is only a flight away.
Susan in Mandarin. Susan, go ahead.
Yes, I was wondering about the booster shot for over 65, and after hearing him say we also need to make sure people around the world get the vaccines. I guess now my question is two points. Is it okay for us to get the booster because we should be sharing the vaccine with the rest of the world if we're over 65? And then I just heard you say that if the virus mutates too much, we might need even another shot. So I got my second dose in February, and I'm over 65, and I got the Moderna. Should I get the Pfizer shot?
Yeah, lots of folks have questions in that age group too, Susan. Dr. Rathore, of course, your expertise is kids, but what about Susan's question?
Yeah, I deal with vaccines for kids and for adults. So I think, Susan, you're absolutely right. Yes, the booster has been recommended for those 65 and older, and at this point in time, I would recommend all 65 and years and older get the vaccine, the booster dose. In fact, I want the booster dose. I'm not 65 yet, but I want the booster dose because the science tells me it works. The decision of the FDA was based on the data that was submitted to them. The CDC will meet this week and make another recommendation of who should get the vaccine, and they don't necessarily have to follow the FDA's recommendation. But the global question is an extremely important one. It's an ethical question as much as it is a public health question. I think people don't realize that if we don't immunize the global population, we are still at a risk. And I think so. And the ethical question is, are we, because we are blessed with all the riches, we are giving that booster dose to many of our elderly who deserve it, but we are not perhaps paying as much attention to those underserved parts of the world which don't have the vaccine. There are populations around the world in the countries where only 5-10% people have been immunized. That's not something that could sustain for a long time to protect everybody against the infection. So something will have to change when these vaccines are going to have to be available to everybody in the world.
Dr. Mobeen Rathore, always good to speak with you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Melissa. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Much more still ahead on the show. Later, it's the debut of EV Rider. That's in our Going Green, but up next.
The pandemic has had a unique role in lots of areas, and we are seeing that it's impacting the numbers and percentages of people that are having suicidal ideations.
Preventing child and teen suicides. Tips for teachers and parents in this pandemic. That's next. Be subject to the same. All right. The social isolation, fear, anxiety, and economic stress that have accompanied the pandemic have resulted in ripple effects for frontline workers and families. And it's had a particularly toxic effect on youth, particularly teenage girls. September is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. Colleen Rodriguez, Executive Director at Jewish Family and Community Services, has some insights into how we can help friends and loved ones and their children who may have suicidal thoughts. Take a listen. Colleen, always good to speak with you. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. Always important to focus on, but especially now in the pandemic. Can you explain why there's a renewed focus on suicide prevention right now?
Absolutely. The pandemic has had a unique role in lots of areas, and we are seeing that it's impacting the numbers and percentages of people that are having suicidal ideations and seeking help in the emergency room, especially in our younger and teenage children, and interestingly enough, with our young girls. And so that's something that in the mental health world and in the nonprofit sector we're really paying attention to. And so the timing is perfect that September is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, because we really need to be talking about this and giving parents the resources that they need.
Yeah. Parents of daughters especially. Why are girls particularly at risk?
You know, and looking at all of the studies, because it's significant. I mean, in last year, one of the studies done out of Tampa was boys, the percentage of boys seeking assistance for suicide was about up 3.7%, but the girls was up 51%. So we're talking a dramatic difference. I do believe that girls tend to be more social, that the isolation, the being away from their peers, being at home plays a different, is a different impact with girls than it does boys. The social media and that being the way that girls really communicate, not that boys don't, but I really think the bullying and what happens on social media has a larger impact on girls than it does on boys. And all of that kind of compounds itself when a child is home in isolation.
Sure. So what does the issue look like here in our area, and what's being done to help young people here on the First Coast?
The issue looks exactly the same here. Duval County Public Schools last year, pre-pandemic, did a study and did a survey with students, and they found that 1 in 5 middle and high school students reported having a plan to commit suicide, and that was up significantly from 2009, the past time they did a survey, and that's pre-pandemic. So I'm really worried about what's going to happen when we do a survey post-pandemic if it's more than 1 in 5. So the numbers across the state are trending the same here locally. I think it's important that the school system has those numbers. They've done a great job through the full service school program trying to get mental health counselors into the schools. Jewish Family and Community Services has the Arlington area. Other agencies have different areas in the school system. But I also think it's important that parents pay attention. Everyone always thinks, oh, not my child, oh, my child's being moody, oh, he or she is having a hard time. But it is really important that as parents we're paying attention and we're having conversations with our kids.
Right. And when children or teenagers come to you and tell you that they're having these thoughts, take it seriously.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what should parents do then if they are worried their child is at risk? What do you advise them to do?
The first thing is they need to have a direct conversation. I know it's an uncomfortable conversation, and sometimes people are afraid to bring up topics like this. I don't want to give my child any ideas, but let's face it, children are already having the ideas. They're having access to this information. It is best to be direct. Are you feeling sad? Are you feeling depressed? Are you having suicidal thoughts? Do you have a plan? That's exactly what a therapist is going to do with a child, or if you take your child to the emergency room. It's important that parents have those conversations and then take them seriously. And if a child at all indicates yes to any of those questions, they need to seek help immediately.
And as you said, there are lots of places to go, including your organization, Jewish Family and Community Services. You are open to the entire community. You also run DuPont Counseling Services for families and kids. United Way has a 211 helpline for suicide intervention and prevention. There's also the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. That's 1-800-273-TALK. So reach out, folks. And thank you, Colleen Rodriguez. She's Executive Director of Jewish Family and Community Services and also a licensed social worker. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Today's segment of Going Green is sponsored in part by North Florida Land Trust.
To drive interest in electric vehicles. Take a listen to the debut of EV Rider.
Welcome to another episode of EV Rider. Imagine if you could double your charging speed by simultaneously plugging into 2 J-Plug Level 2 charging outlets. If you've got a Zero SRF or SRS, now you can thanks to a new invention. I caught up the Zero SRF motorcyclist and electrical engineer Scott Harkless. He's the owner of eMoto Design and the inventor of the DJ Rapid Charge.
I dug into it a lot. I learned a lot about the whole J1772 specification and dug into all that. And I realized the way that Zero has the bike laid out, the way that that specification works, that I could actually, do something about it.
Bill Bortzfield is the brains behind EV Rider, which you can check out on YouTube, and he joins us now in today's Going Green. Hey, Bill.
Hey, good morning, Melissa, and it's great to be back at WJCT. I appreciate you having me on.
It's great to have you back. We miss you. Of course, you worked here until quite recently. Now you're hitting the open road like Dennis Hopper and Easy Rider on that bike of yours, but you have an electric bike. So tell us about EV Rider.
Yeah, so, I'm a longtime motorcyclist. I've been riding, oh gosh, I hate to say it almost, but since before the turn of the century. And I'm also into sustainability. Mm-hmm. And so I've felt kind of strongly about transitioning, but I'm also a gearhead. I've owned a couple of muscle cars, 2 Trans Ams, and so I'm not about giving up the fun aspect. And the more I thought about it and the more I learned about EV vehicles, the more I saw, wow, this is the new golden age of automobiles and motorcycles. And what I'm finding is they are every bit as fun, and in many cases more fun than some of the best cars I've ever owned. Like the torque is amazing. One of the things I'm excited about, for example, Dodge is going to build a muscle car in 2024, and their tagline is, "Performance made us do it." And that is what's got me excited.
So basically then what I hear you saying is, for people contemplating buying an electric vehicle or an electric motorcycle, which is what you have, there are so many more options now, and you don't sacrifice the fun of driving or riding when you go electric.
Yeah, and the whole idea of EV Rider is going to be putting the joy back in motoring. I can remember as a kid, my dad and my mom, we'd always go out for a Sunday drive. And these days, if you think about it, oh man, with all the pollution out there and all we hear about climate change, you almost feel guilty about it. But when you get out there on an electric motorcycle and you hear nature and you've got the performance of, to fellow motorcyclists, something like a Ducati or a Hayabusa, It's just amazing. And the same goes for automobiles. And the great thing about automobiles is, it used to be they almost sort of looked like a science experiment. They tended to have kind of strange styling, and they didn't have much range, and they took like 10, 12 hours to charge. And thankfully, those days are gone. I mean, there are things like the Jeep Wrangler 4xe plug-in, or if you need a minivan, the Chrysler Pacifica you get as a plug-in hybrid. So, and then for sports car fans, for example, there's the Porsche Taycan. It's really going to be fun to see it all change like this, and it doesn't mean it's going to be a step backwards in any way. It's going to be a leap forwards.
So people need to subscribe to your new YouTube show, EV Rider, because you're going to be talking about all of this on the show.
I am, but I don't want to give a misimpression because I'm going to do all kinds of things. For example, later today I'm going to be interviewing the CEO of Vision Marine Technologies. That is a new electric boat company. They're making outboard motors, and I don't know a whole lot about it yet because I haven't interviewed them yet. But it's another exciting thing. I mean, the idea that we can get better products that are zero emission, these are the types of things that get me excited because, this whole thing about climate change and pollution doesn't need to be all doom and gloom because we're going to make a lot of leaps forward as we figure out ways to combat it.
Yeah, out of crisis comes opportunity.
Absolutely.
We have electric charging stations right here at WJCT Public Media in our parking lot. You were even involved in that. And so every time I drive into the parking lot and I see those charging stations, I think of you.
Well, as a matter of fact, I'm plugged in outside right now grabbing a quick charge.
Now, tell us again what kind of motorcycle you use.
So in my case, I have a Zero SRF. It's an American company. They're based in California. And there is a local dealer here in Jacksonville, and there's dealers all over the world. And of course, Zero is not the only ones making an electric motorcycle. Harley Davidson makes its Livewire, which they've spun off into a separate brand. And another one that's gaining a lot of traction here in the States is called Energica. They're an Italian electric motorcycle company.
What's the most common question you get from people who are thinking about buying an electric vehicle of some kind? What are their biggest concerns, and what's the easiest way for people to learn more and kind of get a comfort level with this?
Yeah, the top two questions are pretty consistent, whether you're talking cars, SUVs, motorcycles. What's the range and how long does it take to charge are the two most common questions. And just like automobiles, the answers are all over the map depending on what you're going to buy. EVs can run anywhere from 120 miles for the lowest mileage EV sold to more than 500 for the upcoming Lucid Air, or 400, just over 400 for the Tesla Model S. In general, the average these days is somewhere between 250 and 300 miles of range. In terms of charging, wow, that's really improved. So for example, the new Ford Mustang Mach-E, it'll add 60 miles of range in 10 minutes. So, we, for example, we did a 538-mile trip. My wife has a Mini Cooper SE, and the charging company had free charging all weekend. So we were like, oh, let's go down to New Smyrna, let's go up to Savannah, and we just plugged in and got free fuel. You can't beat free.
Can't beat free. I'll tell you, our youngest is about to turn 16. I'm going to hand her my old Ford Escape with 200,000 miles on it. She can drive that to school next year. And I want to buy a hybrid SUV. So I'm going to be calling you, Bill, for some advice about that.
Well, there's a lot of great choices out there for sure.
And if you want to learn more about electric vehicles, subscribe to Bill Bortzfield's brand new YouTube channel, EV Rider. This is so great. And you can follow along with Bill on his travels. This is where society is heading. So pay attention, learn, and have fun. Thank you so much, Bill.
Melissa, thanks for having me back.
And in a moment, celebrating a century of style at Hugo's, a Jacksonville institution. That's coming up next. Yay! That was good. For years, millions turned to their daily local paper to help them stay connected to their community. Many papers have gotten smaller and some are gone altogether. So public radio news is growing to fill the void, and we need your help. There's strength in local journalism, and it begins with you. Give now at wjct.org/donate or call 353-9528.
I'm Courtney Lewis, music director of the Jacksonville Symphony. The orchestra and I are delighted to welcome you for the 2021-22 season, live in Jacoby Hall, September 24th and 25th. Romance abounds as award-winning pianist Daniel Shu performs Mozart's Piano Concerto No. 20, along with the Jacksonville Symphony's inspiring musicians. Tickets at jacksymphony.org.
Hi, I'm Chris Boyd, host of Think. Think is a show for curious minds. Whether we're discussing history, science, politics, or the arts, my hope is that every conversation inspires curiosity and complexity, and that every listener walks away with their own questions, inspiration, and a thirst for more knowledge. Tune in and join me as we learn something new and take a moment to think. Tonight at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
On the next Fresh Air, Bloomberg Businessweek reporter Max Chafkin talks about Peter Thiel, the tech billionaire who co-founded PayPal, secretly funded the lawsuit that bankrupted the website Gawker, and broke with most of Silicon Valley when he backed Donald Trump. Chafkin's new book about Thiel is called The Contrarian. Join us.
Today at noon on WJCT News 89.9.
The 40 million people who rely on water from the Colorado River are running out of time. Federal officials have declared an emergency water shortage. It opens a new chapter in the West's struggle with drought and could mean the end of a way of life for thousands. That story next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, in 1921, a German-trained decorator named Albert Hugo traveled by train to Jacksonville. He and his wife set up shop in the dockhouse of Arthur and Nina Cummer's English Tudor Revival mansion on Riverside Avenue. They grew their client base and moved to their present location on Phillips Highway in 1947. Today, the fourth generation of the Hugo family runs this beloved local business, and this month they are celebrating a century of style. I spoke with Richard Hugo about the family business, 100 years in Jacksonville, and what's next, including a big sale this week. Take a listen. So, Richard, it's exciting to see a local business celebrate 100 years. Let's talk about a century of style at Hugo's. How did the business begin a century ago?
It began on Riverside Avenue. Honestly, my grandfather immigrated from the Austrian-Hungarian Empire and ended up in Jacksonville because his sister lived here and she sponsored him, I would guess. He ended up in Jacksonville, and then he made a short trip to visit friends in Plant City and met my grandmother. She sewed hats and did seamstress work and was a seamstress, and he was back then called a tapissier, and he did upholstery, wall covering, and reupholstery and cabinet work. And they moved back to the big city of Jacksonville and ended up in Mrs. Cummer's boathouse for a while they redid some of her furniture and got settled into Jacksonville.
So how many generations of the family have worked in the business now?
There are now 4 generations.
That's pretty amazing. How do you keep it going?
A lot of arguing. No, honestly, my father always had a passion for it, and his brother Charles always had a passion for it. Of course, my grandfather was trying to support a family, et cetera, and he had been trained in that in Europe, through the apprentice system. So that's what he knew to do, and my grandmother, of course, knew how to sew. And so they started on Riverside Avenue, and then I just was born with a passion for it. I was lucky enough, and I have three children that work in the business now, and a couple who don't, but they all have a passion for the legacy, basically.
Now, of course, the pandemic has been hard on all businesses, but at the same time, people really have turned toward focusing on their feathering their nest, being at home more. How has that affected your business and the dealings you have with your customers?
Well, our problem at this point right now, post-pandemic, so to speak, is just getting product for customers. Luckily, we have a very large showroom of 30,000 square feet of lamps, mirrors, pictures, end tables, living room, dining room, bedroom furniture that are readily available, that we've always sold off the floor. We've never wanted to be a gallery for anybody. We've always wanted to put our look together, our style together, and present it to Jacksonville so people can purchase off the floor. And we also do reupholstery and new upholstery, so we're able to do things in a very quick manner, 6 to 8, 10 weeks, based on what frame. If it's a custom frame or something, it could be a little longer. But we're able to move forward because we control all that in-house.
That's what makes you unique, I think, and it's what keeps things interesting. So how do you
Correct.
see the next 100 years for Hugo's?
Well, that's up to my children. One daughter is heavily involved in interior design. One child works in the business. He's just graduated school in business, so he's just trying to learn the business. His name is Paul, and the designer's name is Jenny, Jennie. And then Matthew, we started a commercial division several years ago, which is very successful. And he does millwork, casework, et cetera, for large commercial projects throughout the Southeast. And that's his passion. So they're all running with their passions right now, which is what you got to do. You got to make it fun and passionate.
Absolutely. Now, here's some exciting news for customers. You've got, as part of your celebration of a century of style, you're going to be offering hundreds of your beautiful items at 50% off later this month, correct?
That is correct. In our 30,000 square foot showroom, not special order, but things that are on the floor. Just as a celebration, so to speak, I'm going to individually sale price hundreds of items that will be 50% off.
Now, that kicks off Thursday, September 23rd through Friday, October 8th. I'm going to be checking that out myself. So congrats on a century of style. Richard Hugo of Hugo's Interiors. It's great to talk to you, and thanks.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you the opportunity.
And the number to support us here at WJCT when you're not down shopping at Hugo's is 353-9528. Station manager David Luckin is here now with more. Hey, David.
What a nice segment.
Yeah, I'm going to go check that out for sure.
This is the show that just really brings the community right to you, whether it's politicians or artists or shop owners or anyone in this community that matters. Melissa tries to get in here and talk to.
That's right,
and that's
including you.
Exactly. That's why we love this program, because it's the glue that holds this community together in a lot of ways. We try and tackle the issues of the day on the day they're happening. We don't try and be follow news. We're trying to lead the news with breaking news, and our producer was very proud that she's beat the networks a few times with segments on this program
that other
people have followed. So this program is important to us, and we know it's important to you. So take the time now to give us a call at 353-9528. You'll be glad you did. $5 or $500, whatever fits your budget. Fits our budget just perfectly.
If you pledge a certain amount each month, you could get some WJCT branded socks and T-shirts. You'll also be entered into a drawing to win a pair of Hamilton tickets. So that's pretty cool. Night. So make the call now and support public radio. Support this community, because that is what we are here. We're a community. We're building community. Join us. Call us up at 353-9528 or donate online at WJCT.org. You can even text your donation in to WJCT 899 to the code 44321, I believe it is. Make the call and make the pledge and keep public radio going strong here on the First Coast. Let's listen now for 1A. And David, you'll be back in a little bit.
Thank you very much.
Hogan Law Firm.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Distracted driving is deadly. Teens? Yes, but adults too. And there are millions more adults than teens. Arrive alive. Let's end distracted driving.
Learn more at waynehogan.law.
Announcing Vickers Landing at Oak Bridge.
bridging retirees with an all-new Ponte Vedra Beach community, featuring new homes, a resort lifestyle, and a life plan for every stage of aging. Information at vickerslanding.com.
This is WJCT